Okay, we've had a lot of reaction already to the analysis of David McWilliams. I'm going to bring most of that to you after 11 o'clock, but to give you one example. So what does David say to public sector people who can't afford a pay cut? I can't afford one due to childcare costs and a lot more. I work in the university sector, and if they do try to cut my pay, my colleagues and I will strike. This will mean universities, schools and hospitals will close for service this year. And I'll bring you, as I say, more of that reaction after 11 o'clock. Now, some might say for that, now that reaction that we are getting to our interview at the top of the programme with David McWilliams, his analysis of the economy and more particularly his analysis of the revenue figures and the prospects of the abandonment of pay increases under the partnership agreement due to the public service in September. Tell David Williams to cop on, says Mary, and look beyond the easy targets like teachers, nurses and Gardaí to save money. Well, I think he did, in fairness to David, specifically say that the teachers, Gardaí and nurses were not to blame for the current predicament. Mary says, be creative and go for cutting numbers of junior ministers, salaries and expenses, tax top earners. Be creative, be creative, be creative. I think Mary wants us to be creative. Barry says, my father has been a national school teacher in a disadvantaged area, dealing with kids with learning difficulties in particular for 40 years. The suggestion that he is to be the one that carries the can for the ineptitude of others is appalling. Chris says, listening to the Minister for Finance this morning on Morning Ireland nearly drove me to distraction. He, like the rest of the motley crew in Fianna Fáil, refuses to see how dire the situation is and how incompetent he and his government are. The same old mantra is trotted out about social partnership and discussions here, there and everywhere. However, tellingly, there is no action. If the Minister wants to gain credibility, he should announce a 50% cut in ministerial salaries and an end to all perks, including government mercs, etc. Lead by example. We cannot afford their lifestyle. It's as simple as that. Paul in Limerick says, Myles, I think David is a brilliant economist and normally agree with what he says, but I'm a public servant. I have mortgage, exorbitant childcare costs, etc. I also give a lot of my time to a voluntary service rescue service. If my wages are cut, then firstly, I'll strike. Secondly, I'll have to stand down from this voluntary service because I'll probably have to find a part-time job to pay my mortgage, etc. My colleagues in this service are of the same view, and apparently some of the colleagues of Paul in this voluntary service in the private sector have already been forced to quit. And an email from Annette who says, cutting pay will induce a national lethargy. Consider the effects on motivation and innovation. The Celtic Tiger was not simply a property and banking bubble. Ordinary people worked harder, putting work ahead of family on a daily basis. The best and the brightest will once again leave. Working mothers will be motivated to leave the workforce. National productivity will fall. Pay cuts for the public service are simply a tax on those workers. The effect will be the same as a tax cut: reduced spending, reduced demand, reduced jobs. Every other country is talking stimulus while our leaders continue to dig our graves. Some more of your calls and emails on the issue of the recession and the government finances. I'm in a flat in freezing cold conditions. The walls are black with dampness, and now they're taking €5 a week off us instead of giving us empty units all over the country. What a way to run a country. And I'm an employee, a long email here. I'm an employee in Galway who voluntarily accepted a 20% pay cut on the 1st of February 2008. I did this to try and save the company and thus my job. We have survived until now. However, I've just been informed that the firm will not survive beyond January of this year. Regretfully, my colleagues accepting €400 instead of €500 over the last 12 months, which we could ill afford, has not saved our jobs. What we do next is unknown. However, most of us will not be able to service our debts. I believe we have done our utmost to contribute towards the stability of the Irish economy. However, we, the lower paid, have simply not been able to achieve this on our own. The fact is the burden has been placed squarely on our shoulders, and we are going down under the weight. The fact also is that all people earning over €60,000 a year have not even begun to make the sacrifice that is paramount to recovery. Well, I think the message that we are getting at the moment is that those people, if they haven't already begun to make sacrifices, are going to be making those sacrifices in the very near future. And